Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
I said to somebody the other day, just remember, we all had an AOL address at some point.
Some people still do, but yeah.
I know, right? MySpace.
I was just going to say. Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Woodard, and I'm really happy today to welcome a new friend, Brenda Foster. Brenda is a marketing professional dealing mainly with nonprofits for most of her career, and she is a self-taught AI evangelist. Well, I'm so happy to meet you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Oh, of course. No, I'm really excited to talk about this. It's been just an incredible journey so far, and I'm really loving it because these concepts are things that everybody's worried about, but they never get down to, right? Like, okay, so how do I make these decisions? It's really hard. Otherwise, You're just scared away and you're like, no, I'm not going to turn it on. Not going to use it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I'm so excited to talk about this with you today. So before we get started, would you like to introduce yourself? Like, what's your background and how did you get expertise in this area?
So I'm Brenda Foster, and I have been with a PR firm that works on just cause communications for about 30 years. I've done that because that's my passion. And so we work for nonprofits, associations, foundations, and governments, right? Just to try to take our PR skills and use them, in the best way possible for the world. And so when AI sort of came on the scene, I remember I was sitting with one of my clients who it's a bunch of brain surgeons basically. And they were all saying, have you seen ChatGPT yet? Have you seen ChatGPT yet? And I said, oh, what is this? And so got on right away. And then, people really started to understand the use of AI for communication, because I think before it's been this, there's that difference, right, between generative and other AI. And that's really the first time that I had seen that promise. In my role as Chief of Innovation at Vanguard, we decided to really investigate this to see, could we use it well, and could it be helpful to our clients? So we put together a task force, and we looked at four main things. One of us was looking at, how can it help our writing and editing, because we do so much of that. How can we, what are the biases in it, because one of our big focuses is sort of community-driven communication and making sure that everybody's voice is heard. And so what's baked in there? What are any concerns around privacy, right? And things like that. And also proprietary materials. And then finally, what are some of the ways that we might be able to use it to be more efficient? And what are some ways that our clients can use it to be more efficient? So we spent really the past 2 years really investigating this, and we've come up with a lot of really good protocols for our own organization, as well as a checklist that people can use when they find a new tool. And so we started sharing that around. We did some blogs, and what we found is that people had not had a chance to delve in this deeply, and that they knew little bits here and there, but not how to deal with it. Right? Not how to sort of think about the balance between maybe the environmental impact and the ways that it can be used right now to help audiences that are underserved. So it's been really an incredible journey, and I never thought I'd be talking this much about AI all the time, but apparently it's in need, so I'm happy to do it.
I think somebody said the other day, just 2 years ago, nobody even knew, ChatGPT wasn't out yet. And then it just changed the dialogue so quickly. So I'm really glad that you and your firm did that investment and can help explain it to the rest of us. But I love how you laid that out originally too, with a committee with those areas of practice. I think for a lot of nonprofits, exactly as you're saying, we talk about AI, but we don't really talk about how to do AI, how to use it, how to investigate it, how to set up guidelines and policies. So that idea of having a committee but breaking it into those chunks would make a lot of sense for nonprofits too. I think they could take that same approach.
Yeah, I usually have an arrow chart on my presentation that says start with a task force, right? Then look at your mission and align the pieces that you can live with your mission, right? There are a lot of things that we've decided are rules for us that I know that a lot of other nonprofits are not choosing to do. And that's fine. It should just align to your mission. Then make the policies, whatever they are, and have somebody keep an eye on them because, as you know, everything changes every single day. And then finally, the training, right? So I think that's the part most people miss. And even now, after all this time that we've invested in it, we're finding that we're still not giving people enough training to get them confident enough to make the tools useful. And really, there's no point in having it if you are too afraid to use it. And I do think, though, when I have done real demonstrations, I've now gone to the point where I make a list of potential prompts that could help whoever I'm talking to and just put it right in, live to show them. And when they see the output, they're like, oh, oh, okay, yes, this could help me. This might be
Yeah.
worth it. This is not stealing my property because I'm being smart about it, right? This is not going to take my job because that's not what I asked it to do. So I do think there's a lot of proving that we need to do. One of the things that's been struggling, one of the things that's made me struggle is that I am a great learner. So I look for trainings all the time on AI. What new can I learn? And I will tell you that most of them just focus on the cool things it can do and none of this other stuff. And so if you can't get over those other barriers, it kind of doesn't matter if you know what it can do because you don't trust it. And I mean, just like you wouldn't hire an employee that that you don't trust, you're certainly not going to hire an AI assistant, to do if you don't trust them.
Can you talk a little bit more about that training element? Because I really like how you put it of even if you've made an investment into creating a policy, kind of understanding where AI can help you, what guidelines you want to have, what guardrails you want to have on it, then how do you approach that training piece? Like, do you have some tips for us on getting your staff to have the time to try it out, but also like understand how to use it within your guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've been doing is a lot of demos from peers, right? Because again, we have lots of trainings we've sent them to, and I found that most of them tell you the bits and pieces about AI that it's great to know for a party, right? But it isn't going to help me use the tool. And so, or they do it so fast, or they give you 15 tools to try. And I've got a list. I have a running list of tools I want to try. I still haven't opened a single one of them because there's no time, right? So what we found is the best is really to either, we haven't done this yet. I think it's my next step. Pair people together, right? Come up with a mentor who's excited about it and somebody who wants to learn. Or we take probably about half the time of our monthly staff meetings to do demos, to show different applications, to show results. And we give examples of things. For example, we work with a lot of clients who don't have a lot of money. And so you have a scope of work and you try to stay within that scope of work, but sometimes they need something different and you really don't have the funding for it. So one of the first things that I ever said that was very persuasive was I was in a meeting with a board explaining branding to them. All right. I had a presentation, the whole deal, and they said, it'd be so much easier if we had a tip sheet. And I thought, I really don't have the money for a tip sheet. And so they were talking to somebody else during the call. And while they did that, I went into Copilot and I said, this presentation, turn it into a tip sheet. And it did. I made 3 or 4 little tweaks to it to make sure everything fit exactly what I had put on the presentation, fancied up. And by the end of the call, I was able to forward that to them. Now, that is something that they needed. And it's also a great value add for me to be able to pull that off. And frankly, without AI, they just wouldn't have gotten it. And so it's not taking work away. It's actually giving me an opportunity to help people more.
And if you hadn't already like known how to use ChatGPT to ask it to do a summary and a tip sheet in that way, you wouldn't have been able to do it so quickly. So I feel like that is another way that you can be persuasive of, yes, put the time in, like put an hour aside every week to play
Yeah.
around and try this, try that, follow some directions, do some learning, and then it's going to pay off like almost right away, I would expect.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, I think even if you just have people give them 3 or 4 prompts to try, I want you today to take an hour to try these 3 or 4 prompts and see what you can do with them. Play with the prompts, try to get different options. I was working on something yesterday that took, I don't know, so much refinement, right? Like I was like, so this is good. I need it to be better for these 3 ways. Sometimes when you get to the end, you think, could I have done this myself by now? But then you learn, like, oh, I need to give you all more information up front. And so that's how you learn. One of the other techniques that I think has worked well is to actually show people how it can help them in their personal lives, because they're much more likely to jump in and use it at home. So for Thanksgiving, I used it. I said, I want to serve this to this many people at this time. It gave me a shopping list. It scheduled exactly when I should start and stop cooking everything, so it will all be hot on the table at the same time, right? Like it was so helpful. I've done things like uploaded the beach house I'm going to next week, uploaded the file, and I said, okay, what's the best way to organize? What are things in this beach house that I need to bring supplies for? Like what filters does the coffee maker use? And those kinds of things for people feel less intimidating. And when it works for them, then they're like, okay, I'll try it for work now. It's very interesting.
I agree, because I think you'd be more likely to say, well, I totally screwed it up on my personal one. Like it doesn't have
Yeah.
any impact on my job performance, or, like I didn't lose time out of my job to do it. And that's something I was thinking about what you said before of it might take you an hour this week, but as you learn how to do it, it'll take you 15 minutes next week and 10 minutes the week after. So it really is a good investment if you can see it that way.
Well, and I'm finding, because I've decided it's my assistant, I'm finding that I'm so fast now that while I'm on a call and we're debating something, I can end the debate, right? Like, hold on a minute. What are 4 more ways to say this? Hold on a minute. Otherwise I'm going to have to go back to my desk and think it through. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you needed it now. So now I've given it to you. And as a writer, I mean, I was trained as a journalist. There is not a chance that anything that clients are paying me for, which is also my passion, is ever going to come from AI, because I love it too much, and the pieces of it that matter are the ones that I wasn't going to do in the first place. That just make me better at my job.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've seen a lot of tips on that of using it for the busy work
Mhm.
and doing the stuff that you have a passion about or that you have a skill in or that's your job yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for us, we really sat down and thought, if you're going to bring AI into your nonprofit community, we've come up with 5 questions that you can ask, right? And our answers, Vanguard's answers to these questions, are going to be completely different than other people's. And that's the point, right? And so the first thing we look at is who is impacted if we use this tool. And what that means is negatively and positively, right? So one of the things we've decided is that, again, I have that broadcast journalism background. The idea of using a fake voiceover really bothers me, because that is somebody's honed talent, the same as I would never generate an image that can be generated by a human. I don't want to lose that human creativity, right? Just for the sake of, oh, let's be faster, or let's be cheaper. So for us, we don't cross that line. If it's going to impact human creativity, we don't do it. At the same time, we also look and see, is this going to make an entry-level employee's life a little better? They can take fewer notes at meetings and listen more, come up with strategies more quickly in their career than, waiting until they've done that 97th monthly report before they get to try a press release. So, that question for us, like I said, I think everybody ends up with a different answer. I think the second one we came up with was, who is left out if we use this tool? And so part of it was, again, what's baked into these algorithms, right? How do they control for bias? Is there anything on their site that tells how they do that? Where can you find that information? Will the tool itself tell you what they do, right? Is it being honest? But then the other part for us is, are we giving chances to people who maybe don't have them? Like, are we able to better provide help to people with disabilities? Because now we have some tools that we didn't have before. The idea of being able to caption things so much more easily than we could before, and providing that in so many different ways. I know there's a tool right now that will, do the closed captioning, which I hadn't had before, right? It's just regular captioning running across. So, those kinds of things we found, those are important to us. We look at the mission, we say, how does this tool help us pursue our mission, right? And does it mean that we can monitor trends and challenges more? That's the trade-off I always tell people about the environment stuff, right? The environment stuff is going to get better. We already know from DeepSeek that it can on these large language models, but there's also some incredible things that are happening in the world around tracking climate change, tracking where the effects are the worst, tracking where the impacts, what's impacting it the most. And so, if you've got that kind of a mission, this isn't something to just say, oh, throw it out because of the impact. I feel like that's fixing itself as we go, because we also as a planet can't sustain that kind of energy use no matter what we do. Also, I happen to live in an area of Northern Virginia that is very data center heavy, and I will tell you that we don't need more of those. So, I think a lot of this will work itself out, and we also need to advocate for it to work itself out. But then I also think, does it make us focus on too much on data and analytics? Like, in other words, we get this tool. I think, for instance, when I think about communication in particular, there's a lot of pressure to produce results, and people always want that data, right? I mean, we all live and die by our Google Analytics on our websites. But part of the problem there is that if you don't look at it in a way that's individual to you, you can be saying, oh, but this competitor has way better analytics. They're getting way more people to their site. Well, we're just not them. Let's talk about how we're growing for us. And so having AI, I think sometimes can give you too much information. And I think that's important to know. Then, of course, what we talked about earlier, what do employees need to maximize tool use? What kind of training do they need? What's it going to cost us? All of those things. How many of these tools should we have at one time? And then finally, what are the ultimate risks and harms? Because in some cases, is your data being tracked? We know, for instance, our very first rule was, do not put anything into ChatGPT that isn't already public. Don't do it. Now we know that we can pay for closed systems. And so, we've invested in a couple of those, not a lot. It's a rough time right now, but we've invested in a couple so that we can use it more efficiently. But, you have to look at that with every tool, because some of them are worse than others. We have a new tool from China that is still very, very concerning. And then, accuracy is another thing. Like, what are the risks and harms? I know even 2 years ago, I'm sure you feel the same way. Generative AI, what you were getting out, I was like, I don't think that's right. Not sure where you got that, but it's not right at all. One time I figured out that generative AI can't do math. It can't do math. I actually asked it to do something simple, and it couldn't do it. And so then I was like, all right, I'm really going to test you. What is 2 + 2? And it was like, I really can't figure that out for you. Okay. It might be better now, but I gave up on it for math. So those are really, for us, those are the things that we've figured out for us for the 5 key questions. And I think for nonprofits, if they can follow those, then really what they come up with is a plan that can be so helpful to them.
Mm-hmm. Can you talk? I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the ethics, because I think, especially in the nonprofit space, there is that tension, like you talked about. Like, if you're an environmental organization that deals with environmental issues, or a community organization, like you said, and there are a bunch of data centers coming in, there are nonprofits, I think often that use that as a little bit of an excuse of, well, we just won't do it because, it goes against our mission. So I like your idea of kind of delving in a little bit and seeing those trade-offs. Can you talk a little bit more about, your approach to the ethics of it and how nonprofits can overcome that? Like someone said, it's the pool we're swimming in.
That's
So
right.
knowing how to use it and putting those ethical guidelines in place, I think is really important for our sector. It may not be as important for-profit companies that are using it, but I would just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would say they've evolved quite a bit. I was really, really worried about the environmental piece because it's really the first thing that I'd heard about. And the numbers are just so stunning. They're so stunning. And that really made me, having done this work and worked on environmental issues for most of my career, that's very disconcerting. But one of the things I started thinking about and I read more about in philanthropy magazines was how we can be different with these tools than we have been at other points of technological innovation in history. So when we invented, when the internet was invented and it came, we didn't really we thought about the positive implications, but nobody knew to think about some negative implications, right? I would say even worse with social media. We all dove in. I was running around the office when I got my 7 Google Wave invites going, anybody need these? This is so amazing. We're going to be, honestly, I don't even remember. I don't know how long we used it, but clearly not very long. But in that, we found after the past 20 years, when we just dove in and did everything, we found that there were some harms that we did not predict or that we didn't think to correct for. On this, in the nonprofit world, if you start applying this first to all of your underserved populations, all of the other trade-offs, I believe, will make it worth it. When you think about people who cannot read a Medicaid form, being able to come up with plain language instructions that you could not afford a person to come up with for you, that's one of those things, right? It's not something I'm doing, now I can do it. I was talking to a large public housing authority group a couple of weeks ago, and think about all the ways that they need to communicate with tenants, and they don't have enough opportunities to do that. They don't have enough resources. So there are ways to communicate to your tenants, even things like if before all you could afford was an 8 to 5 live person to answer tenant questions. Imagine if you had a chat bot 24/7 that could answer the most basic ones and also tell them when, yes, it's an emergency and you need to call. What an incredible opportunity that is to help the people who need help. And so I think if we invest in those ways first and think about these harms, we can make those choices. I also think, if you're an environmental organization and that is your number one mission, it's possible that for the next couple of years until this stuff dies down, you're just not going to use it. And I think that's okay. That's an okay choice to make. I don't think this is mandatory yet. I certainly think, just like a lot of things, I remember when I got my first job, it was an animal protection organization. And I said, is everybody here vegan? Because I was not. I came, I'm not against that, but I didn't grow up that way. And so, oh, no, we allow everyone. And so I remember the first couple of weeks I brought in my lunch and it was some kind of bologna sandwich, ham sandwich, something like that. And I put it in the refrigerator. Somebody pulled it out, held it up and said, whose lunch is this? And I was like, mine. And they said, you have it with all of our vegan food. You're polluting it. And I said, oh, okay. And I learned, right? Like I learned. And at some point, right, going from I don't tolerate any of this to I tolerate some of it, most groups will go there. There are some groups that aren't going to go there. And I mean, that's completely their choice. They just need to have the information to make that choice.
I was thinking about this the other day and about how I would expect in the for-profit business world, there are a lot of companies who, because employment is kind of transactional, they are looking for, can a chatbot do that instead of a person? Whereas in the nonprofit sector, because we already are used to doing a lot with whatever we have, the idea that you, nonprofit employee, could do something that used to take you the 8 hours of your day and you could do it in an hour means you have 7 hours to do the other things that your nonprofit really has been needing you to do that you haven't been able to. And I was talking with someone who does grants management, and she was saying that, 90% of her time was just verifying, like, is this the grant? Is this the grantee that we're giving the money to? Do they have a website? Is the phone number the same one? Do they have a bank account? Is that their bank account? All of these steps for compliance that they have to go through before they can send the money to them. And she was honestly, if AI can help me do that for all of the regular ones that, yes, it is their number and it is their bank account. She was like, I can actually go out and find the community organizations that don't have a bank account, but they could use a grant from us, which is what our mission is supposed to be. And so it would actually help her do tasks that are more aligned with what their grant making was supposed to be about in the first place. So she was really excited about it. And I think there are lots of those types of use cases that we could find out there in the nonprofit sector.
That's absolutely right. I love that one because it goes back to getting more opportunity for the underserved, right? I mean, you might never find those groups if you're still spending your time just managing the stuff where people already knew you had the application. They might have even had somebody write it for them, but you still have to do all of that work to verify. I really enjoy this. I'm an evangelist of this just because
I can tell.
I believe the potential to change our world. And it's interesting, right? I mean, while companies are trying to figure out how to use people less, I want people to be able to use their talents more.
More. Yep.
In this environment, we've got an opportunity to use all of the work or all the great things that we have in our heads for the best, and let this whatever it is, this new invention really help us get rid of the stuff that we didn't go to college for.
Somebody said that, I can't remember who I was talking to, who said, your investment, it was around staff security and, protecting your staff. And she was like, everyone who works at a nonprofit could work somewhere else for more money. So like that incentive and just like the relationships we have in nonprofit offices where there's so much trust and camaraderie and belief in the mission, so yeah, I think that protecting and saving, like safeguarding your staff, like this is kind of another way to do that is like you
That's
can
right.
have more time to do the thinking stuff, the stuff you're passionate about, and get rid of the busy work and the grunt work to your AI assistant.
That's exactly right. So I said I'm going to give mine a name eventually. I know a couple of others who have named theirs, but I'm still working on who's my favorite. Right? I work between Claude because they're getting better so fast.
And they are surprisingly different. I just expected
really
they would all give you essentially the same thing. And the same thing when I worked between Copilot and Gemini, like it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I think, for us, most of the time work doesn't just fall in our lap. We have to go find it. We compete for it, right? And for us, just thinking about we don't go for grants, we go for contracts, right? It's the same deal. I normally, when I have to write something that shows that I understand an issue, I will always, I'm a professor at AU. And so that I use the AU resources that I have to do a lot of research so that when I'm writing something, I can use all of the citations and everything else. Well, let me tell you how that used to go. And I think how it goes for every student and every academic in America. You go to the resource, you type in what you want, and you get 20,000 things back, right? You narrow it down through a filter, maybe you're down to 800. None of us reads all 800 articles. What we do is we start at the top and we find the first 5 that apply to us. And that's what we use, right? When you do it with AI finds the 5 best articles out of those 800. And so it just changes everything, And so my research is better because I'm pulling out the most cited articles, the ones that are the most in line with what I'm doing. They're not part of a giant search. And then on top of that, when I'm pulling that with the help of generative AI, I'm spending 4.5 hours on something that used to take me 2 days. And so all of that time can go back to my clients, right? To all of the things that I like to do for them. So it's been incredible. And the ways that I think nonprofits can take advantage of that far outweigh anything that even our agency's been able to find.
Wow, that sounds like a great point to leave it on. It's very inspiring. I love the idea of having more time to do more of the things that we want to do. I want to thank you so much for your time today, Brenda. This was really so helpful. I learned a lot about how to think about it, and I loved your steps of the questions to ask to help develop that policy. So thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you, too. I really appreciate you having me.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.